the big explainers of today's episode, that is on Web 3.0. Before I start explaining what Web 3.0 is, I want you to see this tweet, which is of course by one and only Elon Musk. He had once tweeted, "Has anyone seen Web 3? I can't find it." When he had tweeted this, of course, there was a lot of chatter on Web 3, and this is what we're going to explain in today's episode. Before we get on to that, let's tell you what was Web 1. So it is the internet we all know and have used and have been using as well. And then came Web 2.0. What was Web 2.0? Now, that was the user-generated web. Again, we're using it today as it's a world ruled by social media. It's all UGC, user-generated content. But now comes the question, what is Web 3.0? It's essentially work in progress at the moment. Rather than controlled by governments and corporations, the main principle of this is that the web becomes decentralized. Whatever we're using at the moment is governed by someone, right? Also by the government. But the essence of Web 3.0 is that it becomes decentralized, and that is where the blockchain comes to form the base of it. No one central authority controls it. And as we all know, that's the essence of blockchain. No one person controls it. Now, here are some key features of it. Number one, democratic data control. Again, that comes from blockchain. Then there's smart accessibility of information. Then there's personalized browsing, which is powered by AI. And then there is one key to access content, applications, and also stores. Gavin Wood, described as the father of Web 3.0, explains that platforms and apps built on Web 3 won't be owned by a central gatekeeper, but rather by users like you and me. But there are some important elements that we really need to talk about when we talk about Web 3.0. First is DAO. We've explained this in our previous episodes what DAO is, but I'll give you a brief explanation of it here. DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. It is described as a group, company, or collective that have their own rules and regulations which are coded into a blockchain. So that is one part of it. Then there is AI. Web applications will need some decision making and communication between devices, which can be automated with AI, and that is artificial intelligence. It can run these apps. But what about the front end of it? Metaverse becomes the front end of it, the user interface through which we interact. We'll interact with the online world, communicate with other users in an immersive reality in Metaverse. So that was my explainer on Web 3.0, which is, let's say, a reality and also a possible future for us. We'll also have this discussed with our guests who are joining us this evening. There's Nitin Sharma, General Partner and Co-founder, Antler India. He's Global Web 3 lead as well. Then there's Malik Kodadia as well, Co-founder and Chairman, Finnovation Lab. Very warm welcome to both of you, Mr. Kotadia. First, we'll begin with you. Of course, we're talking about Web 3.0. We've explained what it is, but if you can give us a real-world example of Web 3.0.
Certainly, and it's a pleasure to be here on your show again.
Do you want to take few seconds to set up, and I'll quickly go to Mr. Sharma here, and I'm also enjoying my coffee here on Coffee and Crypto while I sip this, and Mr. Kotadia, and there you have Mr. Sharma also sipping his coffee. Give us a real world example of 3.0.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful weather in Bangalore for coffee. So look, I think you did a great job, Arun, explaining the basics of Web3, and it's a great question. What is it today? What is it being used for? What are the right examples? I would say, a few come to mind. Mm-hmm. First of all, the infrastructure itself that we are so used to in a centralized fashion with Amazon or Google, that is getting decentralized. It's still early days, but there are projects like Helium, which is trying to do a decentralized version of a telecom company.
Sure.
So a telecom company is usually a monopoly in many markets, and they are trying to create a telco network with essentially peer-to-peer users as the nodes. Another example, which many of your listeners would have heard probably, is a project called Filecoin. So they are trying to do decentralized storage, and instead of us having to pay Google or Dropbox and relying on a centralized entity? Can we make that something decentralized? And so on and so forth. When you think about the infrastructure, right? Storage, computing, content delivery networks, there are some interesting real world applications coming up. Still early days, but they are working much better than the last cycle I saw in 2017 when these were just hype. Today, the technology has matured. The second category of real world, that is real world applications that are out there, are really what I would describe as the combination of DAOs and NFTs, which you covered already.
But would you call it a thing of future or a reality?
So, there are some interesting things already happening. So in the public media, there is a lot that's been discussed about how people got together and formed a DAO and bought works of art or a copy of the US Constitution, those kinds of things. Music is getting decentralized through that. For me, a very interesting example is a project I had personally invested in called Molecule DAO, which is trying to actually disrupt how drugs are developed. So today, unless a big pharma company wants to put in $1 billion, they do not even start on a new drug. So many drugs don't even get developed.
Right.
What Web3 elements of DAOs and NFTs are enabling is Molecule is taking this and getting a crowd-funded method to start new drug development funding.
Okay. But I mean, the overall, motive of any technology is to give us a great user utility. Mr. Kotadia, how is Web 3.0 being able to provide that, or will be able to provide greater user utility, because that's the end use of it?
Thank you. That's an important question, and I'll just carry on from where Nitin left. Actually, if you look at some other real-world applications of Web 3.0, there is a lot happening around data sovereignty. Technologies like data wallets, sharding, etc. They will all be powered by Web 3.0, and they've been around and gaining popularity for some time. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, it is human nature that we care for something that we own or where our incentives are aligned to the platform, which was not exactly the case in Web 2.0, where all your data was owned by the tech giants like Facebooks or Googles or Amazons or Apples of the world. And the platform economy kind of evolved that way, but it was not entirely that. Now, if you combine these two forces, and I call them the 3 Ds of data sovereignty, decentralization, and distributed ownership, then in this new economy, whether it will be the real economy as we call it now, or whether in 10-15 years the metaverse economy, there will be a significant boost. And I want to just conclude by saying that this is something I have been consistently sharing on your show as well, that crypto tokens, they are not meant to be, and they can't be a killer application of Web 3.0 in itself, but they can power such killer applications or important applications such as the metaverse or embedded commerce. So I think that's what we need to recognize and understand.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned crypto coins, and I would like to go to Mr. Sharma here. I mean, the show is called Coffee and Crypto, and I also want to bring it back to cryptocurrency and crypto tokens and coins. What is Web 3.0 going to do to cryptocurrency?
So obviously, the first thing that we must remember is let's talk about digital assets, not cryptocurrency, because some people get confused. So if we just think of digital assets as a new asset class, all of these native tokens which might be powering some of the applications we are talking about will become valuable because of usage. Today, they are only valuable because of speculation. So today, it is all about the promise of the future, right? But if Web3 projects actually take off, if all of these things we are talking about, from real world DAOs to drug discovery to new telcos and file storage and self-sovereign identity, if this becomes mainstream, then these tokens will actually be used in huge numbers of users. So just like we can value things more fundamentally, we will be able to do that in that future. So, the whole criticism of digital assets being only speculative will start to go away. So in that sense, it's a great, it's actually the next step in the evolution of this whole new world. But of course, it will take some time.
Sure. Mr. Kotadia, just last quick question, again, linked to the finance part of it. What can it do to the finance world other than the basic crypto trading?
Thank you. This is an important question. And since I come from about 20 years of global banking experience, I'll share how this goes well beyond just crypto and trading. So if you look at the last 35 years of development driven by technology and internet in banking, it's all been around the concept of destination banking, whether it means you go to the ATM or the branch or the contact center or even the internet banking website or mobile banking app, or you use your plastic credit card. You're always going to your bank or you are actively using the bank. But over the last couple of years or few years, we are now seeing a new concept in finance called embedded finance, which means, or I call it ambient banking. In a very simple way, you can say that it is banking and transactions happening everywhere, but the bank is somewhere in the background and you don't really know or care. And whether you look at examples like Amazon Go or even sitting, ride hailing, etc., the transactions just happen in the background.
Right.
Now, I genuinely believe that while Web 2.0 has enabled this, Web 3.0 can be the native layer of this embedded finance revolution. Just as Web 1.0 was to internationalize or information in finance, and Web 2.0 was about transactional finance, Web 3.0 can be the embedded or the native layer of this embedded finance revolution.
Sure. So exciting times for all of us. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us and joining us for this conversation.